2, 1, go.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Ask Andy event here in Walsall. We're delighted you've been able to join us. Just wanted to explain a few things about the evening. So this is going to last for an hour, this session. And although it's not being broadcast live, it's going to be recorded. And so we will hopefully be able to use some of the clips from this evening's session on social media. So depending on the question that you ask, maybe you'll be seeing yourself as a famous face on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram in the near future. And as I said, we're going to be taking questions, but it might not be possible to answer all of the questions that are asked this evening. So we'll be providing an email address for you to forward those questions to, and we'll make sure that whatever happens, you'll get an answer to your question, whether it's live from Andy this evening, or we'll collect those questions and make sure you get an answer in due course. So I think it's over to Andy to give us a bit of an introduction to the evening.
Well, Eddie, thank you very much for doing this. I always keep these introductions very short because we want to get straight to the questions. The clue's in the title, Ask Andy. All I will say is that really it's down to those on the line for what they make of the next period. I've been doing these Ask Andy sessions since before I was elected, actually. We've done them in pubs in your constituency before, Eddie, across all sorts of places. And it's my sort of commitment to be accountable to the residents across the West Midlands. I do try to get out and about. Any question is very welcome. I'll give you my very best effort at answering it honestly. If I don't know the answer, I'll say, or if maybe it's a central government question, I might ask Eddie to help me out. Or if it's a local council issue, I may refer to one of the councillors who may even be on the line. But critically, I hope it really will, at this time, obviously, help you thinking about the mayoral election coming up on just 5.5 weeks away now. The 6th of May is election day. And I'm very proud to say I'm putting myself forward again because it's been an absolute honour to serve the citizens of Walsall and indeed the rest of the West Midlands. And I hope we've made some good progress over those last 4 years. And I hope people will be encouraged by that to think, yeah, we can have another go at this. So there we are, Eddie. That's all I wanted to say. We'll get over to the questions.
Cracking. Well, thank you very much, Andy. Well, let's kick off. We've had quite good weather today in Walsall, and people will have been out and about perhaps for the first time in a while. And one of the things that they'll appreciate is both green belt and green spaces. Now, my understanding is that you're very keen, you have very keen views with regard to the green belt and its protection. I just wondered if you could explain some of your thinking there to us.
Yeah, of course. So it's a very important question to start with. So let's be clear. We've got to build more houses and the region is doing that. We've actually doubled the number of houses that we are building, which is brilliant. And within that, we've doubled the number of affordable homes. But we've got to build them in the right place. And my categoric pledge is that we should not build them on the green belt. We must build them in what we call brownfield locations, which is derelict industrial sites, or perhaps not derelict, maybe an old housing scheme that needs regenerating, needs more coming to it. And actually, we've done, I think, an encouraging job over the last few years at getting on, doubling that number of homes, but building on brownfield and therefore protecting our green belt. And the logic of it's really simple. It's there for the future, for all of our future generations, you might almost say. It's the green lungs of our society. And if ever we were to sort of concrete it over with development, it would be lost forever. Doesn't achieve our climate change objectives, doesn't achieve our objectives of having wonderful green spaces to go and enjoy. And I genuinely believe that across the Black Country, there are enough brownfield places for our needs. And just to pick out in Walsall, we've had some real success regenerating some old brownfield sites. The one you and I have seen through the journey over the last few years, Eddie, the Caparo site up at Birchfields, Leamore, where just there by the canal, I mean, it's lovely now to see the land having been cleaned up, diggers in the ground for actually regenerating that. But I think it's about 250 new homes, a wonderful example of what we can do.
Well, thanks very much for that, Andy. I think also as we come out of the pandemic and the region seeks to rebuild, infrastructure is going to be critically important, and transport links I know is something that are very important to you. So you've done some work with regard to opening new train stations, for example. Can you tell us a bit about more the work you've been working on there.
Well, Eddie, I'm very pleased to, because one of the great stories is right in your patch in Willenhall. So the story goes that I'm a huge believer that people need to be able to move around the region much easier than they did traditionally. So we need to invest in our public transport. Some will always want to use their car, I get that. But for others, if the public transport is really good, we know they will move to that. So we've for 3 years now been lobbying government for the funding to get the Walsall to Wolverhampton railway line reopened, including new stations in your patch at Willenhall and also in Darlaston. And the good news is, about a month ago, we finally got the full funding for that line. So it will definitely happen. The timetable's been agreed. Network Rail have given all their permissions. Walsall Council have given their permission. All these things have to be sorted out. And the diggers will go into the ground probably in about 2 months from now, actually, to start actually the works to get that line reopened for passenger services and actually building the stations. And of course, the lovely thing is, I say Walsall to Wolverhampton, but once you get to Wolverhampton, you can connect off where Wales to the north. And once you get to Walsall, you can connect down into Birmingham. And one of the trains per hour will go directly to New Street for the connections onto the national network. So yeah, it's been a great scheme. And I hope it will be really welcomed by your residents, actually, Eddie.
I'm sure it will be. I'm sure it will be. Now, I have to say, Andy, one of the things that I've been really pleased about since you got elected is it's important to those of us in the Black Country that the mayor isn't just seen as being the mayor of Birmingham. You're the mayor of the whole region. Towns are as important as cities, and you've been working on regeneration for the whole region. Can you give us a flavour of that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll just comment on your first observation, actually, because I think it's a really important point that your residents, I think, will really get. I mean, obviously, Birmingham is a big city. No one's going to question it's the regional sort of capital, if you use that word, but it should not grow at the expense of the towns around it. I've been absolutely clear about this. The mayor must be for all of the West Midlands, and investing in Willenhall is just as important as investing in other parts of Birmingham. So parts of Birmingham, I should say. So we've really tried to make sure that the Black Country gets more than its fair share of investment. So it's been personally a great pleasure to see some of the schemes you've just been talking about come to fruition, actually. But the particular thing you're talking about is obviously our town centres regeneration. And actually, it's been a pleasure to work with you, with Walsall Council, with the local community, thinking about getting government to invest both in Bloxwich Town Centre and also in time, it'll also be for Walsall Town Centre through the Future High Streets Fund and indeed the Towns Fund. So big investment coming into both Bloxwich and Walsall Town Centre. And I think it's a long time since we've been able to say that for Bloxwich, and brilliant the way in which you've come together with us to make the future case for that.
Finally then, Andy, before we start taking some questions from those people who are emailing in, there's also a question of how we're going to make sure that we've got employment back up to previous levels. This is one of the things you were committed to when you first became the mayor. Obviously, unfortunately, the pandemic will have caused us to take a step back. But what are your plans for improving employment opportunities across the region?
So this is a huge question, Eddie, and it's probably just worth giving a bit of context about what's happened here. So if we'd been having this debate 12 months ago, we'd actually be saying we've got record employment levels across the West Midlands, and we'd have been really quite encouraged by our progress. The fact is, in the first 3 years of my time as mayor, we actually grew employment in the West Midlands by 97,000 jobs. And as I say, it took us to a record. And that sort of growth of roughly 30,000 a year was very good by historical standards, you know, and the graph was going consistently and we were feeling very optimistic. But actually what's terrible, particularly for young people, is in the last 12 months, we have lost all of that progress. And actually those claiming benefits have gone up by 95,000. So 97,000 extra jobs in 3 years, increase in benefits, 95,000 in just 1 year. So as you said, the pandemic has really knocked us for six. So the job going forward of everybody, really, the mayor coming together with councils, with businesses, with academics, colleges, everybody, is to more than get those jobs back. So what we've agreed is what I call a mayoral jobs plan. And the target is 100,000 jobs in just 2 years. So it's to more than make up for what's being lost. And most importantly, all of those things are things that we can see now. They're not fantasy if we suddenly got the government to give us billions of pounds. They are jobs that we can genuinely see now. Everything from the jobs that HS2 is going to bring. And just today, it wasn't in your patch, but I was in Solihull with a new business, 700 jobs on the back of the HS2 investment. Really incredible, just in one business. So we've talked about that. We've talked about the jobs in construction that are going to come through housing. We've talked about the jobs in the new sectors like digital, like the green growth. And of course, we've talked about retraining people. And one of the retraining examples I just love, Wolverhampton College, just looking for 720 people to join in being mechanics for electric vehicles, because we've come to the realization that only 3% of mechanics know anything about the new electric vehicles. So it's just a very small practical example of where we're trying to find really good, promised, practical job opportunities. All adds up to 100,000. And the moderator might just put in the chat the link to that plan. If anyone wants to see all the detail, you'll see it's there. And I hope what you take away from it is this is not political promise. This is real fact. We've got the funding for it. We've got the investors. We can make it happen. And on the basis of that, Eddie, I genuinely think we can bounce back from the pandemic really strongly.
Well, sounds very good, very positive to me. You mentioned the idea of brownfield sites, and our first questioner, Matt, is asking, what further powers do you think should be asked? Sorry, my apologies, reading the wrong question. What more can be done to compel private landlords to take action on derelict buildings across Walsall North?
Yeah, it's a really good question, actually. So I'll answer it. Just to give you the scale of it, though, Matt, if you mean individual houses, actually the number is not that large. Actually, Walsall Council has a pretty good record on bearing down on homes that are not being used. If you compare it, say, with Birmingham, their Walsall Council's record is very, very good on this. But if we look at derelict buildings in the sort of commercial sense of it, I think we can actually step in and help here. So I'll give you a really practical example that's being looked at the moment. You'll all know the massive Sadler's Quay in the town centre. I mean, and that's a terrible sort of, what's the word, advertisement for Walsall, isn't it? And what we're trying to do actually probably is buy that, actually. This has been in the press, and then look to work then with a private developer on redeveloping. So we can actually step in and compulsory purchase something to drive forward the development if someone is just sitting on the asset and not doing anything with it. And that is, we will find a solution to that Sadler's Quays example. And again, it's a bit out of Eddie's patch in another part of the borough. Similarly, in Brownhills, the Ravenscourt Centre, which many of you will know, just sitting there terrible. And again, we will really force the development there. So what this is about is being a bit muscular in terms of stepping in where development just has not happened. And those two examples, I think, bring that idea home.
Excellent, thank you. And another question that I inadvertently started to read from Lorraine. What further powers do you think you should be asking for from government to allow the mayor and other local authorities to pursue strong, individualised policies which are right for our area?
Okay, so what further powers? I'll give you three answers to that. The first you will say, oh, that's fairly basic. The second one you will say, that's middling. And the third one you'll say, oh, I'm not sure about that. Oh my goodness. So let's go for it. The first one, we've got full powers over public transport, and I think we've used them well. We do not have powers over the road network, and it's actually very, very, and sort of offences on the road network, for example, they have it in London, complete nonsense. If you do if you commit a traffic offence in London, the fee goes to the Greater London Authority and ultimately the mayor, and then they can reinvest it. Here, if you do it, it actually goes straight to the Exchequer. Now that doesn't strike me as fair. So that's a very simple, practical thing. Road contraventions, as they call them in the jargon. Second one actually would be about the funding for over 16 skills. Now we have some of it, for example, the adult education budget, and we can influence the colleges in what they do, but we don't really fully drive that because some of it is still paid by the national agency, the skills funding agency. I would dearly like to have all of it. Then we could be working with brilliant colleges like Walsall College on exactly how can we put on the right programmes for the region's future economy. And then the third one is a bit more technical, but hopefully people will get it. At the moment, lots of taxes you pay here just go straight to London, but actually we end up getting the money back in some of the funding that they then invest here. Now, it seems very simple to me to say the taxes that are genuinely local, like airport passenger duty, what you might pay for your vehicle licensing, what you might pay, you pay a tax on your electricity bill. Did you know that? Now, they're all local and they could be held locally, and then we would have that pot and then we would be able to invest. And the deal with London would be, Andy, stop asking me for money. You've got your own money, live within your means, live by the success of your region through how those taxes go up if we invest well, rather than keep having the begging bowl out to London, because that's not genuinely empowering local people to take decisions if every financial decision is taken in London. Eddie's looking at quizzically because some central government ministers are not so keen on that, and we have to remember our host tonight is a minister, but that's where we really need to persuade them to trust local people. Do you know, Britain is the most centralised tax country in the whole of the Western world. And I think if we really want these mayoralties and councils to grow their capability, they need to have a little bit more control over their finances.
That slightly quizzical look, Andy, was because I've seen many photos of you with the Chancellor, and I think we've just had a small insight into what discussions might have been taking place between you and him when those photos were taken. So glad for us to be able to peek into those private conversations. We've got a question now. I'm delighted he's on the call. Jay Singh Johal is our Police and Crime Commissioner candidate. And I think personally, it's incredibly important that we have a good, strong relationship between the Mayor and the Police and Crime Commissioner. So this is Jay's question. We've lost 8 police stations in Walsall Borough over the last 9 years. As you might know, I'm campaigning to stop station closures. My question to Andy, will you continue to speak to the current PCC on behalf of concerned residents about the need for our local community to maintain our police stations, which are necessary for a stronger local police presence to tackle crime?
So it's nice when there's a question that you can give a very straightforward answer to, because the answer is definitely yes. I mean, let's just be clear what's at stake here. Jay said 8 police stations in Walsall Borough. I think there have been 44 across the whole of the West Midlands closed by the Police and Crime Commissioners, both of them Labour commissioners over the last 9 years since the job was set up. And I just can't agree with that, because I'm a huge believer that policing starts in the community. People want to see that local police presence, and actually police locally get lots of intel, and then they use that to complete their picture. And sometimes what might appear like fairly almost rudimentary bits of intelligence can add up to something much, much bigger. So I'm a huge believer in that forward police presence. So to be really clear with Jay's question, the current Police and Crime Commissioner keeps trying to persuade me that his proposals to close further stations are right, and I am having absolutely none of it. And I stand absolutely shoulder to shoulder with Jay in his commitment to make sure that all of our current police stations remain open. And you never know, I'm going to provoke Jay here. We might even find ways that a police presence, maybe not a fully fledged station, can be brought back to some of the communities that have lost it in Walsall over the recent years. So yeah, absolutely, Jay. I wish you all strength in your campaign to halt those closures.
Thank you. The next question from Ben is one that I might have a particular interest in listening to the answer to. Homelessness and affordable housing are big challenges facing the West Midlands. What actions have you taken, and what further do you plan to take to tackle homelessness and build more homes?
So Ben, you're getting me to rehearse my stuff in front of the homelessness minister. So he'll give me his view at the end. So Ben, thank you for asking this, because let's take them as 2 separate questions: homelessness and affordable housing. I know they're related, but the answers do have to be slightly different. Because the reason I say thank you is that 4 years ago, when we had all of our hustings and Ask Andys for the previous campaign, this question came up every single time. And you know what? This time round, it's come up a lot less. And the reason for that is we've made enormous progress in the last 4 years. And it's one of the things I'm most pleased by, because I think it goes to the heart of what the mayor's role is all about. So just to give you the numbers in terms of rough sleeping, which is the worst type of homelessness, obviously, the number of rough sleepers we now have in the West Midlands, or had at the November count, I hate the word, it sounds inhuman, but it's what people use, was just 44. 2 years ago, it was 169. So it has gone down by 3/4 in 2 years. And that is primarily because of the programme that we have been running that we call Housing First. And that's a scheme unique to the West Midlands, Manchester and Liverpool, where we take rough sleepers and offer them a home of their own. And the lovely thing to be able to say on this call is Walsall have been the best council in the whole region at this. I'll get this figure wrong, but I think about 80 people in Walsall have gone onto this scheme, and across the whole region, 377 people have gone onto this scheme. And remember, I said there were just 44 left sleeping on the streets now. So you can see the proportions between that. And it's been incredible success. Government funding, we were the sort of original people who said we want to be the pilot of this. And the reason it's been a success is we work with every council. And what they've done is they put in support, as well as having just a home for somebody, but also that specialist support. So if you've got an underlying issue, might be a mental health issue, might be an addiction issue, you get support for addressing that. And nearly every one of those 377 people who went into it are still in their accommodation as a consequence of it. So genuinely, Ben, I think we've made a real breakthrough. And I hope the housing minister will be supportive of it going forward. So we will. And then on affordable homes, okay, because there's lots more to homelessness than obviously just rough sleeping, but it was the most urgent issue to deal with. And everybody said to me, you must, and we have. But the long-term solution to it is building enough affordable homes and indeed social rent homes. Now, what we've done on affordable is we've been really determined across the West Midlands that any development that has our money in it, we demand a minimum of 20% affordable. And I don't know, Ben, what your background is, but many people on the call will know that that's pretty high. Lots of local authorities give planning permission for a lot of developments with a lot lower than 20% affordable in it. But we've absolutely stuck to it in everything we've done. And as a consequence of that, our number of affordable homes has increased from 2,500 in 2016 to over 5,000 in the year ending June 2020. So genuinely, we've made a difference there. And just one last point, because I think you'll be interested in this, Ben, we've also changed what we define as affordable. Across the country, it's usually determined as a percentage of the market price. Now, obvious point, you can be paid the same, but house prices go up and affordable goes up, and you can't afford it. What we've done is said, no, that's wrong. We are going to make affordable related to people's income. So we now say that affordable should be either rent or mortgage payable by about 1/3 of your income. So genuinely, you can afford it. And we've stuck to that 20% of the new definition, and it has genuinely worked. So Ben, there's a lot more to do in terms of social rent homes, but on the pure definition of affordable, we've made a really good step forward.
Thanks very much. I look forward to future discussions along those lines. A pre-sent question from Michael. There's been talk about funding being used to breathe life into our high streets. What do you see our high streets being used for in the future?
Oh, Michael, thank you for your question. It sounds, it's the shortest question so far, but it's very far from easy to give a really short, pithy answer, because every high street is different. And let me just explain what I mean by that. The high street stretches from centre of Bloxwich, centre of Walsall, centre of Birmingham. And obviously they're doing very different things. And indeed, even Bloxwich is a big high street. You've got little local shops like Mossley, where we were yesterday. So, the first thing to say, Michael, answer your question, is there is a different answer for different places. And the smaller, the more local, the answer must be about local retail. And actually, I think one of the best things about the pandemic, if that's not an unfortunate way of describing it, is actually shopping has become more local. Less people want to jump on the train into the centre of the city. They want to be able to be served locally. So with really good local independent shops, that's probably more viable than it was before the pandemic. So that's part of the answer. But why you're pushing me to is the much bigger point about the chain store isn't going to be on every high street as it used to be. So let's just think what's going to come in its place. Some good retail will remain. It's not the end of retail. Please don't think that's over. But definitely there'll be more people living in our town centres and our high streets. And some of the developments in the middle of Walsall are brilliant in that respect. I want to see more sort of incubator space for startup businesses on our high streets. I hope that will be part of the block switch proposal, actually, because people want to be there in the middle there to be local. And then, of course, we've got to think about more public services on our high streets as well. I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? We've got this whole question about health inequalities, some people not going for their checkups and all of that. So where's the obvious logical place for those health facilities? Right there where all the public transport is. So what's coming out of this, I hope, Eddie, is there will be some retail, but other things coming in as well to make our town centres viable. And the whole thing about performance spaces, cultural spaces, that's very important as well. People still want to go to those in social places. So Michael, my sort of nudge to you would be, don't write off the high street yet. It's still the centre of the community, but it will be slightly different to how it was before.
Andy, the question from Richard is yet shorter, but broader, I'm sure, in terms of the answer. So Richard wants to know, what will you do for residents in Walsall if you get re-elected?
Well, I think the most important one-word answer is jobs. I could just give you one word, jobs. And because let's face it, Richard, that is the single most important issue facing us, isn't it? We want to deal with the environmental challenges. We want to deal with the housing challenges we've had some questions on. We want to deal with all those social issues around homelessness and around health inequalities. I know all that. But actually, the single most important thing is the promise of jobs and investment. And again, just so let's have a look at one or two of the specific examples of what's going on in Walsall. It's why the redevelopment at Phoenix 10 is mission critical. Let's just talk about what's happened there. That space just by the junction 10 of the M6 has been derelict for 25 years, that old copper place, and nothing's happened. And what we've been able to do, the combined authority working with Walsall Council, is bring it back to life. We've got private sector developer. We put aside tens of millions of pounds of combined authority and let money to clean it up, and we'll be bringing new industrial use there with 1,000 new jobs. So, Richard, it's that type of development that will see good long-term jobs for citizens of Walsall. And I genuinely think in the situation we're in after the pandemic, that's the most important thing to be concentrating on.
Well, Andy, let's just extend that theme for a moment, because our next question from Charles is about youth unemployment.
Yes.
So what particularly do you think we can do for those people?
Okay. Charles, thank you. This is very challenging. I don't know how old you are, Charles, and I'm not going to ask you, but I'll tell you, I was 18 in 1981. Now, obviously, the significance of that is that was the time that unemployment was at an enormous number. And I was in Birmingham, and so many of my friends just wanted to leave, had to get away. And it was just a time of no hope at all. And I left, actually. I was lucky enough to go to university. Some of my friends didn't. But I learned then how utterly corrosive high youth unemployment can be. So I know we have to deal with this quickly before it gets sort of embedded. It's not at the level it was in 1981 yet, but it's much higher than we would all wish on the back of the pandemic. And that's back to this jobs plan. That's why that's so important, because the group that have lost out more than anybody else in the pandemic is young people. So this is where the retraining bit, which we haven't talked about much yet, is really important. So let me just go through that. So there's probably 4 key things I talk about where there's opportunities for youngsters. They're all pulled together in one place if youngsters want to have a look. We call it the Combined Authorities Youth Platform. And you just go online and look into Youth Platform, and it puts all the resources for getting young people back into work in that one place. And now we're opening up, we're beginning to open what we call youth hubs. We opened one in Wolverhampton, one in Sandwell just recently. Walsall will be very shortly, a place for young people to go to get all that advice. So whether it's about apprenticeships, kickstarts, whether it's about the advice from DWP, all in one place. And of course, they can get it all virtually on the platform. But some of the facilities that are there, first of all, the Kickstarter. Now that's government scheme, but we're responsible sort of promoting it, getting maximum take up in the region, looking for 20,000 opportunities for Kickstart across the region. Then the next thing we're working on is what we call our sector-based work academies. Now, we didn't get many for marketing in calling it that, but it is what exactly as it says. Working with all of our colleges, they've put together one brochure, all the colleges across the West Midlands, no other region's done that, with all the opportunities for training specifically for the sectors that are growing. So whether it be for health work jobs, where there's a lot of them, whether it be for digital jobs, where there's a lot of them, whether it be construction jobs to our construction gateway, it's all there. Go to the college and guarantee a short training that will then get you to an interview with an employer in those sectors. And then the third thing we've done is what we call our national retraining schemes, where government have given us cash and we've pioneered what we call our boot camps. And the best one there is in digital. We've had £6.5 million and we've put on short, sharp boot camps to get people digital skills. And the brilliant thing is over 75% of the people who've gone through it have got a job at the end of it. So that's lovely. And the last one is our apprenticeship work, where again, a unique thing in the West Midlands, if you run a big company, you can put your cash into a pool of your unpaid apprenticeship levy, and then it then pays for the apprenticeships in small companies. So it's a unique thing in the West Midlands, over 2,000 done in every year. So I hope, Richard, what you see from that is we take this deadly seriously, and we've got those different schemes that we're putting in place to address what is an enormous challenge on the back of the pandemic.
Next up, Andy, the environment. Emily wants to know, the West Midlands Combined Authority has a target of achieving net zero by 2041. What steps are you taking to achieve this?
So I didn't hear the name of the question already. My apologies.
Emily.
Emily, good. So the answer's lots, and I don't want to just give the glib answer, but Emily, if you're very interested in this, again, Cameron, as the moderator, can you just put into the chat the WM 2041 document, because you can look at all of this. And I'm going to take a guess, Emily, that you're a little younger than me, because your name is very much a youngster's name now. If I've got that wrong, my apologies. But the reason I mention that is actually in designing this and what we're doing, we worked with what we call our Young Combined Authority, which literally is people 16 to 24 who come from across the region, and they sort of shadow the main politicians, and they were absolutely adamant about what went into this, and it was brilliant actually working with them. But there's three key things. So the carbon emissions are basically a third from households, a third from transport, and a third from industry. And you'll see in the plan, we've got plans on each of them. So just top line on each one of them, because we need all three to work if we're going to get to that carbon neutrality. On homes, the big issue is retrofitting, i.e. making traditional homes much more energy efficient. New ones are supremely efficient now. And the nice thing we're doing there is we are running our own, what we call it as a demonstrator, an area where we will take a community, do it intensively to show what can be done if we really sort of, do it many homes together, because you've got to get sort of economies of scale from it. So that retrofitting, and we've just had the cash, by the way, to train young people in the skills for retrofitting. So insulation, boilers, all of those things. So that's a lovely example of how it can give new jobs as well. Second thing is obviously transport. We've got to get people out of their cars and onto public transport, or to go, of course, to a green car. And there we're investing about £1.1 billion in public transport across the region at the moment. I mean, an incredible sum. And that's all about bringing emissions down there. And it's not Walsall, my apologies, but we just won the national competition. You'll be interested, I hope, for Coventry to be the first all-electric city. So every one of their buses converted to all electric, and that was literally a competition with every place in the country. And we, as they say, scoop the pot, hence why we had the PM along a couple of weeks ago to celebrate that. And then the third one is industry, where of course our leading industry is automotive and everything in its supply chain. And what we are doing is working to get to an electrified future there, and particularly producing batteries here in the region, moving away from the combustion engine to full battery automotive. So I hope, Emily, that gives you a flavour that we've got some really, keyword, practical plan. Lots of people talk about fantasy here, but we've got practical actions that are making the changes.
Andy, in part of that answer, you mentioned the idea of people changing profession, and you yourself changed from a very professional career to a political one. So Ryan wants to know, in his precinct question, you were managing director of John Lewis and decided to give it up to stand for the West Midlands mayor. Why did you do that? And was it an easy or difficult decision?
Ryan, thank you. I wasn't expecting that question. Okay, why? I'll be 100% honest with you. It was push and pull at the same time. The push was I'd been MD of John Lewis for 10 years, and that's a long time, and to be running a company. And I just thought, if I'm honest, I've done this. And I actually thought it's time for someone else to have a go, and they'll probably do it better than me, because I thought they'd be fresher, have new ideas, and would probably push John Lewis on, dare I say, even faster than we'd been able to. So that was pushing me, but that was overshadowed by the pull, and the pull was very simple. This was a new political job. I'd never stood for a political office ever. I joked on a film the other day, I'd never even been milk monitor. I'd never wanted to, although I'd always been interested in politics, but I thought the mayor's job might use the skills that I'd learnt in John Lewis. And I just thought that our region could do better. And you might say that's a bit immodest, but when I was thinking about in 2016, I thought, come on, Andy, if you've learnt a few things in John Lewis about leading people, about setting plans, getting things done, I thought, well, maybe you can put them to play in the West Midlands. And so that was the overriding thing. I just wanted to serve my home region, and hence why I chucked in what some people said was a very nice job. Looking back on it, I might have got my timing right of leaving John Lewis in 2016. Because retail's been bloody tough since.
It's very true, very true.
Yeah, it was luck. Nobody knew that in 2016, Eddie. Yeah.
No, perfect hindsight. Question from Harnick. Recently, the Love Willenhall master plan has been launched, yes, and that kind of coincides with the final piece in the jigsaw for us getting the train station sorted. So how will all of this benefit Willenhall?
Yeah, Harnick, you're absolutely right. There's a wonderful, well, it's not coincidence. It's designed by those who were thinking about it, people like Eddie and your marvellous council. But yeah, one of the things we used in the justification for the station is that it would be a bit of a catalyst, a bit of a sort of energizer for the redevelopment of Willenhall more generally. So we've got to prove that, frankly. And some of the housing schemes we also lobbied for, that's also about bringing spending power in. So I think it's really very simple. All the different investments, and we've seen some lovely investments in the centre of Willenhall as well, haven't we? The wedge galvanising one, where they've rebuilt the building opposite their premises. I mean, just brilliant. And I think we can actually look at steady regeneration, which gives if you ask me, what does it give? Of course it gives jobs, of course it gives economic activity, but I think there's something even more important. It gives that sense of pride in a place. And when you see the quality of some of the regeneration that's been done, you have a real sort of little warm glow about it. And I hope the same will be about the station, and I hope that will bring in further investment. And we do know there's still some very challenged sites in the centre of Willenhall that we want to bring that to. So I hope it's all part of a bigger picture, really, Harnick, if that makes sense.
Well, Andy, talking about pride, I think you're probably proud that the Commonwealth Games is coming to town. And I haven't yet had my photo taken with Perry, the mascot, but I'm looking forward to doing that virtually. Pete wants to know, I'm looking forward to the Commonwealth Games coming to Birmingham next year, but how will the Games benefit Walsall?
Yeah. Okay. How does the Games benefit Walsall? we get this so much. So I've tried really hard to make sure the games is not just about Birmingham. I know it's going to say Birmingham on the logo and all that, and there has to be a city, but we've always said this must be games for the whole of the West Midlands, and I think we are achieving that. So obviously, first thing to say is that the venues are split across the whole of the region. I know there isn't one in Walsall. Someone's going to call me out on that. But from Cannock to Leamington, with things in Cannock, in Wolverhampton, in Sandwell, in Solihull, in Coventry, in Leamington. So it genuinely is a West Midlands Games. But let's be more precise about what it will do for people in Walsall. Number one, I hope you will be able to participate in the sport by having some of the teams do their training at camps in some of the great sporting facilities across the borough. I mean, I would be amazed if the Aston University sports fields down in just by Junction 7, if that's not one of the bases for one of the teams. I will also be amazed if there are not really good job opportunities for Walsall citizens. Now, let's just go through this. We're looking for 40,000 jobs at the actual peak of operating the games. And the heart of it is in the Alexander Stadium, literally 3 miles from the Walsall boundary. And we're also looking that a number of the jobs are sustained longer term. Because what we're trying to do is get people new skills on the back of the games that they will use forever. And this is a West Midlands wide scheme, not just a Birmingham scheme. And that's already live. So if you want to get skills in event management, sports, training, advanced catering and hospitality that we'll need, those training programs are already available. And then the other thing we're doing for businesses across the whole of the region, and this is something I'm very excited about, is we're using the Commonwealth Games to do a worldwide promotion of West Midlands businesses. This hasn't been launched yet. You heard it here first. I'm hoping the Prime Minister will come and launch it. And we're calling it the Trade and Investment Programme. And literally on the back of the Games, we'll be telling the story of Britain open for business, back of Brexit, global Britain, all of that. And we will start all of this at the World Expo in Dubai in October. And it's probably going to be branded, haven't fixed this yet, the Road to Birmingham. And it's all West Midlands businesses. Now, we've never had a sort of spotlight moment like that. And we're genuinely leading it for the country. So I would hope that whether you're, I don't know, HomeServe or Castings or any Walsall business, you will want to be part of the uplift that will come around that business promotion. So there's jobs, there's training opportunities, there's business opportunities, and there's obviously opportunities for hosting teams as well. So there's actually quite a lot for Walsall in this. Sorry, long answer, but you can feel I feel very passionately about this.
Well, Andy, I share your passion, and although it's not in my constituency, I'm delighted that we've got the British Judo Centre of Excellence,
yes,
which is based at the Wolverhampton campus in Walsall. So we're expecting some serious judo players to be training using that facility during the games. Very exciting.
Just let me tell you one other thing, Eddie. Sorry to interrupt you, but let's just think about how much cash is being invested here. Putting on the games is probably going to be £1 billion of investment. Now, there might be some on the line who say, what a waste. But actually, from the West Midlands point of view, that is an incredible investment from central government, this Conservative government, who's invested in the West Midlands in that way. Yes, Birmingham City Council put some in, the Combined Authority put some in, but the huge majority of it comes from different forms of central government. And it's jobs for people in the construction of it all already. We had a training camp down at Perry Bar, 400 jobs for local people building what's going on there. So this is an incredible national investment in the West Midlands. You don't get £1 billion for many things. So one thing I am very proud of in my first few years is I was there persuading Theresa May, who was Prime Minister at the time, to put that £1 billion on the table.
Well, it's interesting that we should finish at this point. You've been slightly unpolitician-like by giving accurate and kind of precise answers to the questions, Andy. So I think we've covered all the questions that have come in.
Brilliant.
But that final comment that you made, you're right. You're bending the ear of Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak. You're right in there fighting for the region, and I'm delighted as the mayor for Walsall, as the MP for Walsall North, that you are out and about right across the region. And obviously, I was delighted to see you delivering leaflets on the Mossley on Saturday morning. So we're always pleased to have you physically in Walsall, but it's great to have this opportunity to have you virtually here as well, answering questions directly to the public. So thank you very much for your time this evening.
Well, Eddie, can I just say thank you for chairing it with your characteristic charm, and it's brilliant to be working with you because it really does make a difference if there are brilliant local representatives as well. So Eddie, thank you for what you've done with me over the last few years as well.
Thank you everybody for tuning in, and no doubt there'll be another Ask Andy event soon if you want to join that one. Thank you.
Thanks. Good night, everybody.